Welcome back to the Founders Leadership Operating System. This episode is one of my personal favorites. Why blaming sales is the fastest way to kill your culture. In this episode, we tackle one of the most destructive leadership habits in startups, blaming sales and sales alone when the company misses its revenue number. When sales becomes the default scapegoat, it doesn't just hurt the sales team, it quietly poisons the entire culture. I've seen this happen time after time, as have my friends, and collectively we've seen this happen in several hundred startups. Accountability disappears, cross-functional ownership breaks down, and the real problems in strategy, product, marketing, pricing, and execution remain unfixed. So, if you've ever seen sales blamed for problems that clearly started somewhere else, share this episode and help spread it through the sales communities on LinkedIn, Reddit, and other social media platforms. Make this go viral to stop the insanity of blaming sales for things that are not in their control. Let's first start on the positive. What successful startups do? Well, guess what? Everyone owns the sales number. Successful startups, scale-ups, and category leaders have a culture where everyone is responsible for the sales number. Every department contributes to or takes away from revenue growth. To me, this is a fact that can't be challenged. It's like a natural law. It is like gravity on Earth. It just is. Now, if your culture is all about teamwork and family and we're all in it together, but your behavior says sales alone owns a revenue number, you're running a broken leadership operating system. You are setting yourself up to blame the wrong department for the wrong things. For the people on the front lines who do most of the day-to-day work, this is often viewed as being out of touch with reality and leadership hypocrisy. That's why I love Series A and Series B venture-backed startups. Everyone understands if they don't all work together like a synchronized swimming team, they won't have a company, they'll probably all lose their jobs, and their stock will be worth nothing. This sobering fact eliminates politics and personalities from running the company and forces everyone to work on the right principles, which is basically aligning the 3 S's, strategy, structure, and system, the 3 P's, processes, programs, and people, to a North Star metric, period, and getting everyone to work together as one team focused on the same goal. Hence my phrase, one team, one goal. And this is Leadership 3.0 at its finest. So what's the premise and the cultural problem? Well, this will be shocking to some, but sales gets too much credit when things are going well, and they receive too much blame when things are not going well. The reality is that successful sales performance is a team sport that spans all departments. So you've got to recognize, reward, motivate, instill ownership and accountability accordingly. Everyone owns the revenue number, not just sales. So what does that mean from a practical application perspective? Well, sales should not be taking credit and doing victory laps when they blow out a quarterly number without recognizing that all the other departments were mission critical to making this win happen. Without their alignment and support, sales would not have been able to achieve what they did. Again, this goes back to one team, one goal. Conversely, when sales misses their number, the weight of the entire company can't come crashing down on sales and sales alone, because I can guarantee you that the other departments were culpable in the miss as well. This truly, again, is one team, one goal. So the questions for any CEO or C-level leader reading this or hearing this are simple. If sales ran a perfect playbook from the initial contact with a suspect to close one, would the company's 3 S's and 3 P's do the following? First, would it help achieve that quarterly annual target? In other words, accelerate sales. 2, maybe it would hurt achieving that quarterly or annual target. Maybe it would be slowing sales. Lastly, number 3, would it be preventing achieving that quarterly and annual target at all? In other words, it would stop sales. So if the answer is no to the first question and yes to either of the other 2 questions, then sales is not your problem. Leadership is the problem. You are the problem. Hey, Joel, that kind of sounds harsh. Why do you say that? Well, leaders are the only ones that can fix the product strategy, system, structure, process, and program issues. They created them. They need to take ownership and fix them. But sadly, this is often where the leaders blow up their carefully crafted culture, teamwork, and family messaging because they don't hold themselves accountable to fixing what they alone can fix. Sales is easy to attack, it's measurable, and it's visible. And since the product is so good it sells itself, the problem must be sales, right? By the way, this is a common leadership hypocrisy refrain. So think about this. If sales is always your problem, every single time, then sales is probably not the problem. And that's why I bring up the fact that leadership is the problem. And most likely it's tied to the product value propositions. They're eroding. There's competitors that have come out of nowhere. The product strategy, structure, and systems all around the product value proposition are breaking down, but they're going to point the finger at sales. There's a great infographic in the video. So if you're watching the video, check out the leadership failure map. But if you're on the podcast, you won't be able to see it. These are the leadership 2.0 scenarios that I want you to avoid at all costs. And there's 13 of them. And the following scenarios I'm about to share with you have come from my friends and colleagues across the network in LinkedIn. And I've gotten these stories from so many people. It spans over 200 startups. So it's not just, a single person's perspective. This is dozens of executives across a couple hundred startups that have seen these things happen over and over and over again. Let me do a quick summary of what we're going to cover. Then we'll go into each one. So the first one is when unrealistic board targets destroy morale and culture. The second one has several items underneath it, but basically it talks about setting up compensation plans that actually create conflict internally. So there's sales versus finance, there's a leadership team versus the functional leaders, there's sales versus product and engineering, there's sales compensation conflicts with product strategy or channel strategy, there's direct sales versus channel sales compensation plan conflicts. There's probably more, but those are the ones we see. Then the third category is product roadmap sales target disconnects. So this covers things like, the product doesn't work at all, or when new features or new products from engineering are late, and I mean really late, or when engineering releases a new feature or product but revenue can't be collected. Please don't laugh. This happens all the time. How about when free trials can't convert, or when the channel can't sell what you just released? So those are all part of the product roadmap sales targets disconnect. The last two are a little bit back to the high level, which is when sales is inspected but other departments are untouched. That is a common refrain across the board. And then the last one is the mirror of accountability or deflection. And this talks about, are we going to hold everybody accountable to one system of equally weighted accountability, or are we going to have favorite departments? Okay, please pay a special attention to what the root cause is, or said another way, what the structural problem is in each of these scenarios. Notice how the leadership teams frequently focus on fixing the wrong things, thereby exacerbating the problem. Now, I am 100% in agreement that the sales leaders should always inspect their business top to bottom and side to side every quarter, looking for every possible improvement. To me, I'm assuming that the spotlight of accountability is always on sales by the sales leadership. That's how good sales leaders lead. They own their own function and make sure it is operating at the highest level. The issue that I am highlighting is the lack of accountability vertically to leadership and cross-functioning with the other departments. All right, let's start at the very top. Board level mistakes. When unrealistic board targets destroy morale and culture. What's the failure pattern? Well, founders raise capital on an aggressive 3-year projection. The board pushes these targets as the actual financial plan, or maybe push stretch targets on top of these numbers. Then the company dramatically increases revenue but misses the stretch board target. People earn 50 to 60 or 65% of their commission and or bonus. So the leadership response, the CEO says something like, hey, we're top performer in the portfolio and our investors love us. The leadership trust and cultural breakage goes like this. The employees ask, well, if we're winning, why does it feel like we're losing? The way forward, I covered this in the prior episode, but let me just summarize it here. If your revenue plan is fantasy, you have already damaged the culture. If you set unrealistic targets, admit them, reset them. Model humble, servant, self-aware leadership based on where your market adoption, company development, product roadmap, and customers are at in their journey. Model the ownership of the problem and be part of the solution that you want all your employees to follow. Leadership 3.0 demands that all departments are aligned to the 3 S's and the 3 P's and supports a North Star metric. Leadership 3.0 also demands that leaders publicly display the values they tell the employees are so important. Anything less is hypocrisy. All right, the second category has several items in it. This is going to be covering setting up compensation plans that actually create conflict internally. To me, this is incredibly stupid, but it happens all the time. So the leadership of the company creates compensation plans that create conflict between departments or routes to market. First example, sales versus finance compensation plan conflict. Failure pattern. In a distributor, finance is compensated on minimizing bad debt. So their credit policy is very restrictive, which often restricts or inhibits sales. The leadership response is, well, the CFO says something like, well, sell to where you have available credit. And the leadership trust and culture breakage goes like this. Well, sales leader responds with, I am. However, you won't extend a credit line to the reseller that won a $250 million state contract, and no other reseller that has available credit won that business. Now, I know you can't believe this is happening, but this resulted in losing important sales of Cisco, Hewlett-Packard, and EMC, losing 6 figures of MDF, and losing 7 figures of back-end rebates. So finance won, but sales, and even worse, the company lost. Next category is leadership team versus functional leaders compensation plan conflict. This also happened at a distributor. C-level leadership is compensated on earnings per share, or EPS. They set aggressive sales targets that are consistently missed, but are 10% or more above the required financial plan, and they plan for this. Sales misses their revenue targets every quarter, but beats the financial plan. The company also buys back shares, and the C-level executives blow out their compensation plan. Here's the leadership response. The CEO's on CNBC, hey, we just had a record-breaking year for the company. Record sales growth, profitability, EPS, and share price. Meanwhile, the leadership trust and culture breakage goes like this. The vice presidents are watching the CEO on CNBC, and they look at each other sarcastically and ask, wow, I'd like to work at that company. Well, they obviously realize they do work at that company and that the game is rigged. This company went through vice presidents of sales, regional VPs of sales, vice presidents of various marketing teams about every 18 months. Leadership and finance had no turnover, and this pattern continues to this day. All right, let's go into sales versus product and engineering compensation plan conflicts. This happens a lot at startups. What's the failure pattern? In this example at a startup, the CEO did not believe that salespeople should be paid more than engineering. Listen to that. The CEO did not believe that salespeople should be paid more than engineering. He did not believe that they added a lot of value. Again, this is because the product is so awesome it sells itself, or inexperienced and immature line of thinking. So he set ridiculous quotas to minimize commissions and keep the total pay of salespeople equal to or below that of engineers. This was all done on purpose. My friend told me that he came in as the first VP of sales. He was given a $7 million quota for 9 months. The company did $1 million the prior year. Their product worked at one customer. There was not really a good way to demo the product. They had to do proof of concepts, and these required multiple engineers to jump in and make it work. There was no marketing spent creating marketing demand because there was no marketing people, and there were no other salespeople at the time. Their leadership response. The CEO basically said, hey, look we're going to get more funding, we're going to hire more people in marketing, sales, support, and engineering, and just deal with it for now. But it never changed. Crazy quotas were the norm for anyone in a customer-facing role at the company, and no one made more than 50% of their commission. So what happened? What was the leadership trust and culture breakage? The company turned over their entire sales team twice in 4 years. The CEO was ultimately replaced, but it was too late, and the company ultimately went out of business. The next sales compensation plan conflict talks about product strategy or channel strategy. Here's the failure pattern. 80% of the company's sales comes from product A or product B, and they want to sell more product C. However, the compensation plan does not drive this effort and actually is against it. So the leadership response. The CRO says that a geo or channel needs to sell more product C. The geo or channel leader informs the CRO that his vice presidents of direct sales flat out refuse to do it. This was because they can make their entire quota selling only product A and B, and trying to sell product C only lengthens the sales cycle. So what's the leadership trust and culture breakage? Well, the compensation plan didn't get changed. A new sales overlay division is formed to sell product C. When the team is successful, the company decides to roll that product C into the core offering of product A. The sales overlay team that made them successful for product C is now told they can interview for other roles in the company or take an exit package. This is a true story. I watched it happen. Now let's look at direct sales versus the channel. So the failure pattern. Channel registers a deal that is net new and is excited to receive 20-point gross margins. The direct sales team begins to co-sell with the channel partner. The deal grows over time. When it gets time to do the proposal, a deal size has reached an enterprise license agreement or ELA level of mid-six figures. The direct sales team decides to take the deal direct, tells the channel partner they added no value, and offers them 1% margin to pass the procurement paperwork. So what was the leadership response? Hey, we made the number, that's all that matters. Well, the leadership and trust culture breakage went like this. What? Is this really happening? So let me get this straight. If you're in direct sales, you can make the number and destroy the channel which is in itself a multi-million-dollar investment. And that's okay? And then you wonder why the channel won't register new deals and does not want to work with you next quarter? The next area is product roadmap sales target disconnects. And believe me, if you have worked in sales for any amount of time, you're going to get PTSD from this section. And for that, I apologize. And again, thank you to all my friends for giving me these examples from their experiences. The first one, many of you are not going to believe me, but literally the issue is the product does not work at all. I'm not joking. So the product does not work at all. And the failure pattern goes like this. Product engineering can't get the product to stay up doing a demo, let alone a POC, and it certainly isn't ready for production. It just does not work. The leadership response goes something like this. The CEO says, well, we have a sales execution issue. Now, this happens so often it's ridiculous. But how in the world can the CEO blame sales when the product fails at even doing a demo? POCs fail and require engineering and development to get involved multiple times, and I'm talking for a 2-user, 2-week POC. And this is a sales execution issue? All right, how about this one? And you guys are all going to know what I'm talking about. When new features or new products from engineering are late, and I mean really late. So what's the failure pattern? Product roadmap milestone slip. Sometimes for quarters. Revenue targets remain unchanged. Now, this specific example I'm going to share with you came from a company headquartered in the United Kingdom. Here's what happened. The CRO does a bottoms-up forecast for new logo, customer base, direct, indirect, geo-specific growth, all that stuff. She has the data. And she has been the most accurate forecaster in the business over the last XYZ number of years. The CEO needs a higher number to hit one of the many metrics that matter to investors. Year-over-year growth rate, the rule of 40, the list goes on. Now, product and engineering commit to a roadmap for the year, and the CRO ultimately gets talked up to this higher revenue number because product engineering are going to deliver. You can see where this is going. Product and engineering then proceed to deliver absolutely nothing for the first half of the year and are 6 months behind on all new features, functions, and products. The leadership response again? Well, we got a sales execution failure. And what's the leadership trust and culture breakage? Well, salespeople get put on performance improvement plans or are fired. Pressure ratchets up exponentially. Tensions can be felt on every Zoom call. It seems like everyone has ideas on how to improve sales. Sales QBRs are conducted for everyone in the organization with intensity. Yet no other department is held accountable. Read that again. No other department even does a QBR. Product and engineering just shrug and say, hey, this stuff we are doing is hard. To which the CEO says, yeah, I understand. You did your best. Good job. Let's go grab some lunch. The CEO and Chief Product Officer do not stand up and tell the board that the company missed its target. They say sales missed their plan. They do not remember how the revenue targets were agreed upon in the planning process, which was the CRO did a bottoms-up forecast that totaled X million. Product engineering presented a roadmap that the CEO said would get the company to Y million. Product engineering deliver absolutely nothing, and sales come in at X million as they forecasted. But that doesn't matter because the CEO had committed the Y higher number $1 million to the board. The sales team delivered what they said they would do, but the CEO and the CPO do not hold product and engineering accountable. No QBR, no deep dive, nothing. Really nothing happens to them. And then they get on the all-hands call. They don't admit on the all-hands call that the revenue targets were dependent on XYZ features shipping during the quarter. Yet sales dramatically grew the business year over year, but since product engineering did not deliver what they said they would, that's why everyone's getting a smaller bonus. And they blame the sales team for what the other departments said they were going to do but failed to do. I mean, are you kidding me? And then they don't understand why employee morale drops to the floor on internal employee surveys. To quote the Beach Boys, wouldn't it be nice if the CEO explained how the revenue targets were created, what assumptions were made to build the model, what was mission critical from each department, specifically for product engineering, because that was the key revenue driver for the higher revenue targets, then what did not happen, and that the entire company failed to hit the revenue target versus sales missed the plan messaging. Then the CPO and CTO would get up and admit that by not delivering what they said they would do on the product roadmap, which had been approved by the board, that was a key driver in not making the number. They publicly apologize, hold themselves accountable, and present a game plan for getting back on track. The CMO communicates what they will do differently next quarter to make the number, And then the CRO, of course, will, again, do her own deep dive and communicates what they will do differently to make the number. Basically, every department stands up and asks themselves, how can I improve? How can I get better? And how will I hold myself accountable next quarter? You want to build up morale? Bring everyone together like never before? Have all departments admit publicly what was not done and committed to. Then have them recommit to what they're going to do differently to right the revenue ship. Look at the people on the front lines know the truth. When leadership fails to acknowledge what the root cause is, then trust, morale, and culture alignment drop to the floor. That is the negative impact of leaders operating at a lower level. Leadership 3.0 requires full transparency, ownership, and cross-functional alignment to the North Star metric. They need radical candor. They need to display emotional maturity, no ego, and they need to have an equally weighted system of accountability with compensation plans tied and tailored so that each department drives revenue targets and no department escapes accountability. In fact, if sales is the only team under the microscope, your leadership operating system and culture of accountability do not exist. It is a fantasy. Here's another one. When engineering releases a feature or product but revenue can't be collected. So the failure pattern. Product or a feature goes GA, which stands for general availability. But there's no SKU. There's no billing logic, no metering, no ability to invoice. Salesforce.com does not have the products integrated. The quoting system is not ready. So guess what? The company can't figure out how to even bill it. You heard me right. They build a product they could not invoice and collect cash on. The leadership response comes back, hey, why isn't this selling? This is not a sales problem, people. This is a structure and systems failure. Where is the revenue readiness gate framework? This is where a product cannot ship until the SKU is created, billing is tested, legal is approved, channel margin operations are properly structured, and lastly, sales, customer success, and support are all enabled. Here are two more adjacent examples. When free trials can't convert. What's the failure pattern? Well, trial architecture differs from production, or the billing system is not set up and it fails. So trials start and end, but deals don't close in a timely manner because they got to change from where they did the trial to what the new production system is. The leadership response is, hey, sales needs to improve their sales closing skills. No, it wasn't. That's not what we have to do. Friction was engineered into the system and process. So the leadership trust and culture breakage goes like this. Will leadership own the problem they created and hold the right departments accountable to get this fixed? You should be able to convert a free trial into a production product. All right, the next one is when channel cannot sell what you just released. So the failure pattern goes like this. A new product or feature is released, but no consideration was given to the channel. There's no admin controls or management tools. There's no usage visibility, no enablement. Billing was not ready, and the channel can't migrate existing customers to the new product, resulting in managing two separate portals for two separate products from one company. Guess what? Channel revenue stalls. Leadership response? You guessed it. Hey, channel sales and productivity are down. Really? So leadership trust and culture breakage goes like this. No, you froze the channel out by not delivering a channel-ready product. Where is the revenue readiness gate framework that was mentioned earlier? Will leadership own this problem they created? Are they really committed to the channel, or is it an afterthought? While the examples above all damage culture, these next ones are true cultural gut punches that leadership can unwittingly inflict on themselves. The first one is when sales is inspected, but other departments are untouched. The failure pattern. This truly is a cultural breaking point. If only sales owns the revenue number, you will never have one team, one goal. You'll only inspect sales, only sales does a QBR, and only sales is held accountable. Product shrugs off delays, marketing celebrates pipeline metrics detached from revenue, and engineering hits feature completion, but does not deliver a whole product that drives revenue impact. Your culture is going to get decimated. Everyone can see what's going on. The leadership and trusted culture breakage goes like this. You don't have equal accountability. You have hierarchy protection and favorite department protection. You're communicating that one or more specific departments is unique, different, and special, and will not be held accountable. Your culture, morale, and productivity will crater. And saying or doing nothing is not the answer. Okay, the next one is called the mirror of accountability or deflection. The failure pattern works like this. If leadership avoids hard admissions of failure, protects their favorite department, overpromises to the board, ignores frontline feedback, never publicly owns systemic mistakes, or hides behind slack, then your culture is not broken. It's totally accurate. It's reflecting you and the leadership team. The leadership response, well, So when you say that sales is the problem, you have a major blind spot. Leadership 3.0 is not about motivational speeches or accepting that, hey, this is the state of the company right now. It's a little challenging and messy. No, it's about integrity, accountability, and of course, compensation plan alignment. Leadership needs to own, update, and improve the 3 S's, strategy, structure, and systems, and the 3 P's, processes, programs, and people every single quarter. Before they blame the people, before they blame sales, they need to look in the mirror first. This is a sign of great leadership. And from a culture, leadership, trust, and culture breakage perspective, this is a moment for the leaders to shine. Lead by example. Admit your mistakes. Be vulnerable. Get feedback. Then do something about it in a positive, team-oriented, 100% transparent way. All right, let's wrap up this episode. We confronted one of the biggest leadership mistakes in growing companies. When revenue targets are missed, leaders instinctively blame sales. But in reality, revenue performance is almost always the output of the entire system, the entire company. Sales doesn't operate in a vacuum, and when leadership fails to inspect the entire system, they destroy trust, morale, and culture. If you want to create the right leadership operating system or transform the one you have, please download Leadership 3.0, the Founder's Leadership Operating System, from my YouTube channel. But there is another leadership myth that quietly damages companies as they scale. It's the idea that the people who got you here won't get you there. What I'm very passionate about. We're going to unpack that belief, where it comes from, when it's true, which is seldom and only a few parts of it are true, when it's completely wrong, and how leaders can scale their organizations without destroying the very culture that made them successful in the first place. I'll see you on the next episode.